One of the first questions, what to do with gut health. I think a lot of us have gut dysbiosis. It is the core. I mean, obviously the digestive system goes through the center of the body, well protected, but I think it's very important. It's taken for granted a lot. The food industry has done very well with making foods that are palatable and attractive immediately with very slow downside. Everybody's up against an industry that is going to make you want to buy crappy food unless you can afford cooked meals all the time. As far as how to improve a medical disease process, once we get everybody on track as far as controlling every disease process that they have, then my suggestion is to buffer or work on those other systems that might be a little off. We can tolerate so much with regards to our modern day food until a certain point in time, and then the metabolism kicks back or the gut kicks back. And the biggest symptoms that you'll know if you have bad disease is bloating, excessive weight gain, problems with reflux where it burns and comes back up, or problems with excessive farting and between constipation and diarrhea, and or combinations of the two. The more we ignore the gut and all those signs are very tolerable. A lot of guys will say, I can have hot sauce, I'll just pay for it the next day. Then it gets over with. And then we think that we're bulletproof, we tolerated it, well, let's do it again. There's no great blood tests that look for gut disease unless it's pancreatic cancer, H. pylori, which is a bacteria in the stomach, or in some cases you can get a positive celiac as far as antibodies to the small intestine, large intestine. There are a couple of tests that are pretty decent, but the best tests, I think, are the gut microbiome test, which is a fancy poop test. That's one. I like Genova. I don't think they bill insurance. You essentially give poop, and then they grow out how many different bacteria you have. That's totally different than the standard parasite and ova test that we get as doctors. We usually will do a poop test to look for the nastiest bugs or pathogens. We'll probably not have parasites. We usually have just an overgrowth of good bacteria or gas-producing bacteria or a couple bad bacteria here and there. The standard stool tests that we have for the hospital do not check that. Genova checks a wide variety, and I'll try to put a link down in the comment section when I post this previous video I did on how to get a poop test. The other is Genova's breath test. It looks for methane producers or hydrogen producers. If we can't afford those tests by Genova, SIBO test, which is a gas test, or the microbial test to look and see, do you have the right bacteria? Do you have a wrong ratio? Prove it, we fix it, and then we repeat it. If we can't afford that, I'll just shoot from the hip. Number one, treatment would be take away all the crappy things. Tomato, coffee, chocolate, peppermint, alcohol, coffee ground, and spicy food. Tomato, believe it or not, is irritating. It falls into the nightshade realm, and that's not good for arthritis. If you are flared up with a gut issue or an inflammatory issue or an autoimmune issue, get away from those foods. I don't like milk either, cow milk for my patients that are flared up. Number two, try to reline the colon using certain herbs. I did a video on slippery elm and triphala. Those are two herbs. Actually, slippery, it looks like mucilage. When you wet this powder, it becomes very slimy. That's what we need in the lining of the colon and the small intestine. If you don't have that slippery lining, guess where the bacteria cannot hang out? The bacteria in your colon are probiotics. They hang out in the slime. From the inside of the small intestine, the lumen, to the outside of the lumen, you'll have electrostatic charge. Then you'll have slime. Then you'll have the probiotic in the slime. Then you'll have a layer of one cell thick columnar cells that secrete a little bit of slime, a little bit of hormone, and then you'll have the white blood cells of the body, 70% of the immune system. That's all buried in the small intestine. So you can imagine if the small intestine is being beaten up and just abused, no wonder the immune system is going to be on fire. So those of you with rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, Crohn's disease, psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis, all those diseases are antibody generated, meaning an attack by mistake on self. You can say, okay, it's genetics, but you can also say, and this is how I postulate it, I think that 70% of the immune system, when it's irritated and pissed off, it's going to attack self by mistake. I think it's very important to honor the age-old diseases and the diagnosis and the symptomatology that goes with those diseases, but I think we should not ignore the small intestine, colon, digestive system. get the crap away. Number 2 is getting slime. Slippery elm and triphala, I think, are two of the best ones that cause the slime to start being built up again. I did do this in another video. This has a very nice profile of probiotic bacteria. On a previous video, I listed the 5 probiotics that you would need for fat burning. There's about 3 probiotics you would want in your system for muscle building. So it's really cool the way the studies are coming out. So the gut's very important, and it kind of leaches into other systems. So triphala and slippery elm together are my number 2 things to get the slime in. And then once you get the slime in, probiotic. And that's what this would be. But just a warning, this is a little pricey. You can go with your standard pull a probiotic off the shelf, but those of you who have tried to pull a probiotic off the shelf, you probably come across a refrigerator full of different bottles. Some of them on sale, some of them not. Some of them $20, most of them like $30 to $50. You have to be smart about which probiotics. And if you get a whole bunch of antibiotics when you're a kid, the gut microbiome will replace itself. It will replenish and rebuild itself after a hit of doxycycline or Z-Pak or amoxicillin. But if you get hit back to back to back, like some of our kids with ear infections every month, you will irreversibly damage the gut microbiome, and it will not be able to be fixed again. And that's what leads down the line, theoretically, to autoimmune disease. So if you have inflammation, if you have COVID, if you have a joint problem, I would go with Saccharomyces. It's technically not a bacteria, it's a yeast. In particular, reduces IL-6. That's a cytokine. When COVID began in 2020, there was always talk of a cytokine storm. And if you can bring that down with a probiotic, I mean, it's either that or you take a $3,000 medicine, which didn't really pan out to do anything. Once the slime is in, then you can start seeding it or inoculating your gut with probiotic. Once you take away irritating foods, once you get slime in, once you get the probiotic inoculated or reseed the gut with 3 months straight. To those of you who follow me, I usually will do 1 bottle of probiotic until we're done. This is 90 capsules, 3 capsules each. So I'll be done with this in 30 days. Then there's a couple other things. Garlic is a great antimicrobial. An antimicrobial that has been proven to not harm the good microbiota, the good bacteria, but it has been proven to irritate and kill off the bad bacteria, mostly the gas-forming bacteria. If your analysis by Genova happens to show that you have a lot of gas formers, we got to try to crowd out the gas formers by giving more good bacteria inoculations in your gut. At night when you fast, your gut is moving. When you're eating, your gut actually slows down. Your gut senses the macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. The stomach says to the rest of the gut, because it's the pacemaker, I got to slow down the movement because I got to digest what's right here now. The more complex, like fat and protein, the longer the gut takes to digest. When you go to sleep at night, the 23 feet of small intestine, it starts to absorb all the nutrients it needs slowly. That movement in one direction also keeps the gas-forming bacteria from the colon from going back into the small intestine. You're not supposed to have that many bacteria in the small intestine. It's only meant for digestion. And we eat so much that the bowels don't move. They just irritated and they dump. They don't really move properly for digestion. When you have one direction, the majority of the time, which is at night when you fast, those of you who extend your fast, your last meal at 9, and then you don't eat breakfast until 9, that's 12 hours of fasting, your gut is starting to absorb stuff. It's moving in one direction. Those people who have problems with gas or bloating or distension, the last thing I'm going to suggest, a prokinetic. 2 things, it's either the homeopathic liquid, that's a prokinetic, you take at night in water, about 10 to 20 drops. Or this is a little easier, ginger capsules. Iberogast or ginger root. Either one of these 2, if you take it at night, will help tell the digestive system the person is fasting, the person is going to sleep, so get moving. Then it'll start to move the small intestine in the right direction so that it forces all the bad bacteria out into the colon where the lion's share of bacteria will neutralize and keep everything stable. It's kind of like a schoolyard. If there are enough good kids and teachers in the schoolyard, everything's cool. If there's no teachers and a whole bunch of bad people, that schoolyard's going into fights. They're going to paint on the walls. So the large intestine is the schoolyard. And unfortunately, we have inhabited our schoolyards with bad bacteria. And the bad bacteria are going back from the schoolyard into the schoolhouse, which is a small intestine. I think that those of us living with chronic pain, the flare-up is there, and it could be a mood thing too. When the flare-up of mood or pain or chronic suffering is there, when the gut is flared, your pain is maximized. The signal is just magnified. And then you throw in a distended bowel, that is not what anybody wants. That night, you're doing bad. And then you'll reach for whatever semblance of prescription medicine that we have available, and then it starts us going down the wrong road of fast rescue, which is not a problem, but if we do too many fast rescues, we're back into the same problem.